I told his father that the kid wasn't ready for the NBA.
Reported Rich Paul is threatening teams not to draft Bronny James, saying if they draft him, he'll leave to Australia.
Robin and I did not give Bronny anything. Bronny has earned this.
Bronny James should not be in the NBA. I watched him go out there and get cooked the other night. Walked in the game, binked his ass, went up for a layup, went down, he missed the shot, they came back and binked his ass up.
Right now, Bronny James is averaging 0.3 points, 0.3 assists, and 0.4 rebounds.
Because the game is different. Like, I want people to understand and our fans to understand that playing 82 games in the 80s and 90s is not the same as playing 82 games in the 2020s.
Shaq and LeBron James are about to have the biggest clash the NBA has ever seen. And it all started because Shaq made a statement about his son, Bronny James. I told his father that the kid wasn't ready for the NBA. But what happened next turned into a full-blown war nobody saw coming. I'm talking about Shaq revealing the real secret behind Bronny getting drafted. But that's not even the craziest part, because once you hear the full story, you'll understand why this could become the most shocking NBA fallout we've seen in years. See, on the same night that LeBron James signed a 2-year, $14 million contract with the Lakers, his son, who wasn't even one of the top players in the G League, got handed a fully guaranteed NBA deal as the 55th pick in the draft. And that's exactly where this whole madness started. Because the 55th pick in the NBA draft is not really a thing. Like, it's a pick that exists on paper, sure, but historically the 55th pick is where NBA dreams go to die quietly. Nobody throws a party for the 55th pick. Your own mom probably doesn't know you got drafted at 55. In fact, out of the last 5 players picked 55th before Bronny James, only one managed to get even a partially guaranteed deal. And that was after spending a full year proving himself in the G League first. Kyle Guy got a 2-way. Jay Scrubb got a 2-way. Aaron Wiggins 2-way. Isaiah Wong 2-way. That's the history of pick 55. Well, unless you are LeBron James' son, of course. Because even with his average performance, Bronny was somehow able to secure a 4-year deal worth $7.9 million, fully guaranteed in the first 2 years, with a significant partial guarantee in year 3. Imagine going through all that for a second-round pick who was just coming off a college season where he averaged 4.8 points, 2.8 and 8 rebounds and 2.1 assists per game at USC, playing in just 25 games and shooting under 20% from 3. Yeah, I'm not making that up. Under 20% from 3. My guy was shooting worse from deep than I do in a casual pickup game, and he walked into a guaranteed NBA contract. But here's where it gets actually crazy, and I need you to pay attention to this part because the contract wasn't even the wildest thing that happened during the 2024 NBA draft. While Bronny was still sitting on the board in the second round, ESPN's Bob Myers, former GM of the Golden State Warriors, went live on air and exposed how Rich Paul, LeBron's agent, was calling other teams during the draft and telling them not to take Bronny James. His exact words were, "Don't take Bronny James. If you take him, he's going to Australia." Reported Rich Paul is threatening teams not to draft Bronny James, saying if they draft him, he'll leave to Australia. So, let's be clear about what actually went down on draft night in June 2024. This wasn't the Lakers seeing a diamond in the rough. This was an engineered outcome because the Lakers were always the destination. And LeBron got exactly what he wanted, father and son on the same team. I mean, yeah, it's a beautiful story, but also the worst basketball decision the league has seen in a long while. Now Shaq watched all of this happen. And Shaq, who won 3 championships in that building and gave everything he had to that franchise, had something to say about it. Before the season even started, he went on record saying Bronny belonged in the G League and wasn't ready for the NBA level. And as the season played out, that assessment just kept getting more and more validated. Because here's what Bronny actually did in his rookie year. He averaged 2.3 points per game while shooting 31.3% from the field and 28.1% from the three-point line in 27 NBA games. In this current 2025-26 season, his shooting sits at 35% from the field. Those aren't the numbers of a player who's developing. Those are the numbers of a player who is genuinely, measurably, and statistically not ready for the NBA. And the players who paid the price for that, Jordan Goodwin, a guy who signed with the Lakers, got waived in October 2024, clawed his way back on a 2-way deal in February, defended at a high level, and then got waived again in July 2025. While Bronny kept his guaranteed roster spot, Goodwin went to the Phoenix Suns where he immediately carved out meaningful minutes doing the exact things the Lakers desperately needed, defending and staying active. So basically, the Lakers cut the player who could actually help them and kept the one who couldn't. All because one of them had the right last name. That's the part Shaq couldn't live with. Because this isn't just about Bronny being bad at basketball. Plenty of 55th picks are not that great at basketball. The problem is that a player with a fully guaranteed contract, a protected roster spot, and zero leverage to be cut is sitting in the same organization that once had the highest standard in the entire sport. Shaq was asked what he thought in another interview with ESPN, and his exact words were this. I've seen 7-footers in the G League eating noodles for dinner who can play circles around this kid. It's a tragedy for the game. And if we're being honest, that's totally valid because in Shaq's era, you had to be exceptional to wear that jersey. Kobe was exceptional. Shaq was exceptional because that was the deal. The man built the Lakers standard, so he has every right to say when it's being disrespected. And now the 15th roster spot, the spot that a player like Quinn Cook would have killed for, that Isaiah Thomas would have shown up to training camp at 4 a.m. to fight for, was just reserved because daddy plays here. And look, even though JJ Redick went in front of the cameras and said this, Rob and I did not give Bronny anything, Bronny has earned this. And I respect the coach for trying to protect his player. The numbers don't lie. You can say whatever you want in a press conference, but we all know the truth. So Shaq isn't just complaining. Shaq is looking at a franchise he helped build being used as a family project. And trust me, the roster spot is only the beginning. Because the real reason Shaq is this fired up goes way deeper than Bronny. It connects to something LeBron said early this year about the NBA legends. And once you hear what he said, you'd understand how valid Shaq's anger is. Okay, so Shaq was already heated about the roster spot, but then LeBron went on his podcast earlier this year trying to defend Bronny's poor numbers. However, instead of doing that, he essentially poured gasoline on the whole thing because it wasn't enough to hand his son a guaranteed contract on the most historic franchise in basketball. No. LeBron also had to go on record and say that playing in today's NBA is harder than playing in the 80s and 90s, because the game is different. Like I want people to understand and our fans to understand that playing 82 games in the 80s and 90s is not the same as playing 82 games in the 2020s. Okay, sure, LeBron. And that just brings me to the question, how do you have LeBron James out here telling the media that this era is the hardest it's ever been, while his son, who literally has the statistical profile of a benchwarmer at a mid-major school, is walking into a guaranteed roster spot in the biggest franchise in basketball history? It's peak irony because you can't claim the league is more skilled than ever while simultaneously turning the Lakers' 15th roster spot into a Make-A-Wish Foundation project for your son. But guess what? Shaq hit back on a broadcast on Inside the NBA. He basically told LeBron that if he thinks the game is harder now, he should try placing Bronny in an era where the defensive 3-second rule didn't exist. Meaning a 300-pound Shaq could just sit under the rim and wait to swallow your entire existence the moment you stepped into the paint. In fact, to quote him directly, his exact response was, "If you think this era is harder than what the NBA was in the 80s and 90s, you're admitting you don't respect the game as much as you say. And if you're letting your son enter a league without deserving it, you're proving it." Boom. Shaq is calling it what it is. LeBron isn't treating the Lakers like a championship organization anymore. He's treating it like a PR firm for the James family. Because let's actually talk about skill for a second, since apparently that's a conversation we need to have in 2026. I bet you didn't know that Larry Bird was the first player in NBA history to shoot 50% from the field, 40% from 3, and 90% from the free throw line in the same season. And he did it twice. And about that pace argument, because LeBron really thought that was going to land. Lindsey Hunter, who actually played across both eras, pointed out that the 2020s rank about 5th historically in terms of pace, meaning the 80s were running faster. 5th, Byron Scott backed him up completely, saying that 12 to 15 teams were averaging over 100 points a game in the 80s, and that back then it was literally no blood, no foul. You got knocked down, got up, shot your free throws, and kept playing. There was no defensive 3-second rule, no wraparound foul calls protecting ball handlers. In fact, Shaq himself operated in a paint that was basically a combat zone every single night and still averaged over 26 points a game for a decade. Think about the standard Shaq and Kobe set in that building. For them, every practice was war. If you weren't exceptional, Shaq was going to make life hell for you until you quit. And Kobe was going to outwork you until you were basically useless on the team. Now you have a kid on the roster who, as at the playoffs, is still struggling to crack 35% from the field. In Shaq's era, those numbers wouldn't just get you cut. They'd get you laughed out of the facility. And somehow this kid is taking up a spot that could have gone to a hungry G League monster who's actually ready to contribute. That's what Shaq cannot get past. And trust me, it gets worse, because at this point you might be thinking, okay, this is just Shaq. Shaq and LeBron have history. Shaq has an agenda. This is personal. And honestly, that's a fair thing to think. Except here's the problem with that theory. It wasn't just Shaq. Not even close. The entire league has been talking about this for years now. Let's start with Stephen A. Smith because this one genuinely escalated in a way nobody saw coming. Back in January last year, Stephen A. had been going in on Bronny's numbers on First Take, talking about how he wasn't ready and how the whole situation was unfair to the kid in the league. Right now, Bronny James is averaging 0.3 points, 0.3 assists, and 0.4 rebounds. Normal media stuff, right? Well, I thought so too until March 6 last year during a timeout of the Lakers-Knicks game at Crypto Arena. LeBron walked up to Stephen A. courtside and went to confront him in front of cameras. Damn it. And Stephen A., to his credit, didn't fold. He went on Gil's Arena podcast and said he thought the whole thing was, in his own words, some bulls **T because his actual point, the one LeBron was so angry about, was never that Bronny didn't ever deserve a spot on the roster. It was that Bronny is at that point and honestly wasn't ready for the NBA. That's it. That's the opinion LeBron was willing to cause a public scene over. And here's the part that makes it all worse. Before LeBron ever approached him courtside, Clutch Sports, LeBron's own agency, had already reached out to Stephen A. privately about his Bronny comments to sort of intimidate him and stop him from talking about Bronny. So, first they tried the quiet route, and when that didn't work, LeBron handled it himself on the court in front of cameras, which tells you everything you need to know about how LeBron has been running things behind the scenes. But again, was it just Shaq and Stephen A.? No. Because Charles Barkley had been saying the same thing since before the 2024 season even started. Before Bronny played a single regular season game, Barkley sat on the inside the NBA desk and said flat out that Bronny wasn't ready. And then he added, and this is the line that really stung. I really like everything LeBron has done, but this is a bad look for him in my opinion. Even Charlie Villanueva said there's simply no way Bronny should be in the NBA at this stage. Theory. My theory is this. That Ronnie what? Ain't no way he should be in the NBA. Come on. There's no way that my man of 5 points a game, right? I don't say a word. They got a 4-year guarantee. Got a 4-year guarantee. Channing Crowder, who played in the NFL, called Bronny's G League performances unimpressive and said he was getting cooked defensively, which by the way was supposed to be his strongest attribute. Bronny James should not be in the NBA. I watched him go out there and get cooked the other night. Walked in the game, banked his ass, went up for a layup, went down, he missed the shot, they came back and banked his ass up. So, the thing is, all of these people didn't get in a group chat and decide to pile on. They just watched the same games, looked at the same numbers, and arrived at the same conclusion independently. But the most embarrassing part about all of it is that LeBron's response to all the criticism was to either confront Stephen A. or go on Pat McAfee's show and say this. If a guy's not performing, that is all part of the game. That's all part of the game. But when you take it and you get personal with it, it's my job to not only protect my damn household but protect the players. Which is interesting because when you're the one who engineered your son's draft situation, negotiated his contract and set up his playing schedule, at some point the personal and the professional are the same thing. You made it personal, LeBron. Nobody else did that. It's actually insane that we're here in 2026 and people are still trying to act like Shaq is just being a grumpy old head for calling this out. But honestly, once you see the actual math behind this, you'll realize he isn't just mad, he's genuinely insulted. We are talking about a guy who walked into this league and immediately changed the entire atmosphere. Shaq's rookie year was a literal horror movie for the rest of the NBA. He averaged 23.4 points, 13.9 boards, and 3.5 blocks. He was a force of nature. Now, compare that to Bronny James in 2026, who is currently fighting for his life just to crack 5 points on a Tuesday night. It's not even the same sport. If Bronny plays for 15 years at his current trajectory, he would literally need to play 40 seasons just to catch up to the total rebounds Shaq grabbed before he even turned 30. That is the level of standard we're talking about here. And for those that are core NBA fans, we all know the NBA isn't new to finding late-round diamonds. Think about guys like Patty Mills or Aaron Wiggins. Those were 55th picks who actually put in the work, developed in the trenches, and became real NBA assets. Instead, the Lakers took that potential and lit it on fire to run a $7.9 million family experiment. Shaq spent 15 years straight never averaging less than 17 and 9. He did that while banging bodies with actual monsters like Arvydas Sabonis, Patrick Ewing, and David Robinson. Literal giants who would have swallowed Bronny's 62 in frame whole without needing a second jump. Want to know what's crazy? Even LeBron couldn't hold it in any longer. During a high-stakes matchup earlier this season, Their perfect father-son image finally cracked because Bronny made such a massive low IQ defensive lapse that LeBron didn't just give him a teaching moment. He actually started yelling at him in front of the entire court. Check it out yourself. First Sunday duo on the floor together. Ronnie to LeBron and kind of looks at his, oh, and the fans, they're not joking with their votes either. Reports from late 2025 showed that Laker ratings are officially in the dumps. People are tired of seeing the most popular franchise in basketball history turned into a plaything for LeBron and his family. So, to me, I don't think Shaq is hating. He's mourning the soul of a franchise that used to value winning over everything. But here's the crazy part. This isn't even the end of the drama. Because if you thought the guaranteed contract was a slap in the face, the actual day-to-day logistics of Bronny's contract will make your head spin. Get this. Reports are coming out that according to Bron's contract, he is only playing home games for the South Bay Lakers. I'm dead serious. It's 2026 and we've officially reached the era of the work-from-home NBA internship. Imagine being some guy in the G League right now, eating cold Chipotle and sleeping on a Greyhound bus night after night just to get a 10-day contract. While you look over and see Bronny essentially opting out of road trips because apparently Prince Bronny is too high and mighty to grind and put in the work like the other players, Shaq absolutely lost it when he heard this. And honestly, same. He went on a legendary tear asking when the NBA became a part-time gig. It's a total diva move that's completely nuking any respect in that locker room. And you won't believe the fallout this is causing with the actual pros on the roster. We've got internal reports coming out that guys like Rui Hachimura and DeAndre Ayton, who let's be real, have enough on their plate, are privately complaining to the management. I mean, just think about it. How is JJ Redick supposed to look a veteran in the eye and talk about accountability or sacrifice when the rookie on the end of the bench can choose which games to play or not? It makes the coach look like a substitute teacher who lost control of the class. Michael Wilbon actually talked about this and pointed out that the way the media was helping the whole thing was a disservice to the game that the legends built with sweat and blood. And he's right. We're out here tracking a kid who can't crack a rotation while actual hoopers are getting ignored. Chuck was even more blunt. He said he is incredibly disappointed at how the Lakers handled this. He said, "You don't get better sitting on a bench or skipping road trips. But he should be in the G League. Dan, you don't get better sitting on the bench." I agree. I wanted him to stay another year in college if he was going to. The Lakers standard hasn't just dropped. It's been deleted, erased. You have the older fans who lived through the Shaq-Kobe Threep era looking at this and realizing the most iconic franchise in history just traded its entire soul for Instagram impressions and a reality TV storyline. Imagine just for a second walking into a 2003 Lakers practice and telling Kobe Bryant that the rookie in the 15th roster spot gets to opt out of road trips. Yes, see how impossible that sounds? Kobe didn't care about your last name or your highlight reel from high school. He cared about whether you were willing to bleed for the purple and gold. In fact, in the Shaq and Kobe era, the tension was so high that these two almost came to blows just to keep the standard from slipping an inch. Now, fast forward to 2026, and we have a player who is literally not ready for the league being forced down our throats. If you aren't willing to make the sacrifices necessary for greatness, you're just taking up space. That was the unspoken rule of the 2000s Lakers. Now, compare that mentality where everything, every minute, every dollar was earned through sheer obsession to this era where a player can force his team to draft his son. That's the same era he claims is tougher than the era that had Wilt, Magic Johnson, Hakeem Olajuwon. However, the drama finally hit its peak during a recent Inside the NBA broadcast where Shaq gave an ultimatum. He looked straight into the camera and dropped a line that sent shock waves through the Lakers front office. He said, "If this kid is the future of the Lakers, then the Lakers have no future." Boom. No fluff, no PR spin, just the cold, hard truth from the man who put 3 trophies in that building. When you prioritize a family project over professional excellence, you aren't a championship organization anymore. You're a reality TV show. At the end of the day, we have to ask, is Shaq hating on the James family, or is he the only person with the balls to tell the truth while everyone else is walking on eggshells? And if you're a LeBron stan and you actually believe a 4 PPG player like Bronny deserves a guaranteed Laker jersey, tell us why in the comments. But bring the receipts because the numbers sure aren't on your side.